Hello, hello, hello. Welcome to another episode of Forward Thinking Founders. I'm so glad to have you here. Before we get into today's episode, I want to tell you about something that I'm doing later this month, in January. So I'm hosting a meetup for the podcast, the Forward Thinking Founders Meetup. I'm inviting every guest I've ever had on. I'm inviting any angel investor who's an angel investor in the podcast. And it's going to be a lot of fun. We're having it at a great location in San Francisco in late January, and I would love for you to come. Right now, there's two ways for you to come, really. You can buy a ticket on Eventbrite for $50, or you can do what I want you to do in the first place and become an angel investor in the podcast. If you become an angel investor in the podcast, you get to come to this meetup complimentary to what you pay, which is $10 a month or $100 a year, on top of all the other benefits you get for being an angel investor. If you go on my Twitter, which is Matt_Sherman, you'll see that I am playing some interesting games. If you want to come for free, you have to find someone with a promo code. So if you're interested in doing something like that, head over to Twitter at Matt_Sherman. But if you just want to go, you don't want to play games, you just want to meet amazing guests that I've had on the podcast, just become an angel investor. You can do this at glow.fm/F20R. What you get is obviously access into the meetup, you get premium content, you get an online community, and you get my highest graces and my thank yous because I really appreciate the supporters. So, that's all I have right now. We're going to get into the podcast, but if you want to come to the meetup, then become an angel investor or pay $50. Up to you. With that, let's get into today's episode. Run it! All right, how is it going, everyone? Welcome to another episode of Forward Thinking Founders, where we're talking to founders about their companies, their visions for the future, and how the two collide. Today, I'm very excited to be talking to Sean Linehan, who is a co-founder of Placement. Sean, welcome to the show. How is it going?
It's going great. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, thanks for coming on. As I mentioned before we started recording, when I first discovered Placement, a couple months ago, I got very excited, and now I'm excited to dive in to what you're working on. So with that, let's just kind of start with people that may not know what Placement is. What are you working on with your company, Placement?
So Placement, we like to bill it as everyone's talent agent. What this means is that we are taking a service that historically has only been available to the highest, most prestigious levels of talent, basketball stars, rock stars, actors, people that make millions of dollars a year. And we're bringing a lot of the things that those folks get down to more people. Specifically, what we're doing is we're helping people that are in business jobs or technology-related jobs, sales jobs, those types of jobs, get better jobs. And we do that specifically by focusing in on the geographic component of their work. So what we do is we help people find the best geographies for their particular skill set. Sometimes, by the way, that is actually the geography that they're in, regardless of the conclusion of where it is that they should be getting the job. We then help them find that next step for them. So what we found is that most people in the labor market are not in a job that is paying them their optimal amount. And beyond that, most people don't love their job. So what we do is we work with people and with a pretty hands-on approach to understand what are they good at, what are they looking to do, what are their career dreams and aspirations, and we help them jumpstart those dreams and aspirations by getting their next great job.
So there's a few things to dive into here. So you aren't helping someone ultimately, you're not helping a salesperson break into a developer job. You're helping as an example, a salesperson be a salesperson in another geography, but get paid a bunch more. Is that ultimately kind of the thesis?
That's right. What I will say is that one of the things that we do that most people aren't necessarily great at doing themselves is we help evaluate people's skills, take inventory of those skills, and uncover opportunities that use their existing skill set that they may not have already known about. And so in that way, we expand the opportunity set that they're looking at. But insofar as teaching people new skills, you're right. We're in the business of helping people learn how to get jobs and quarterbacking that process for them. We're not in the business of helping people learn how to do jobs. We expect that they already are able to do that.
So in a whole wave of ISA-driven schools that help you go from one industry to another, and just a bunch of different products in that realm, this seems, I'll say the word, this seems almost like contrarian. They're like, no, you can stay where you are. We'll just help you get paid more. How'd you come up with this idea, or what's the why behind placement?
Yeah, and for the listener base who's not as familiar with placement, we do use income share agreements to monetize the service. So it's $0 up front. We teach people basically how to get their next best job, bringing to bear tons of economic research and expertise. And we monetize that with a 10% income share agreement once we're successful in getting them that next great job. So we are sort of following or part of that larger wave of income sharing startups. Though you're right, we do take a very different approach. And it really comes from both my own personal experience as well as my co-founder's personal experience. So my co-founder, an incredible person named Katie Kent, she previously was the director of outcomes at Galvanize, which is one of the big early boot camp players. At Galvanize, she helped hundreds of students get great jobs in data science and engineering. And what she learned in developing that program there was that beyond the reskilling, the folks that were coming through the program had no idea how to run a great job search. So the demonstration of their skills was pretty well trained through the program, but demonstrating that they were a great culture fit, communicating how they were the best employee for the firm. That was something that most people had never had any training in doing. And so that was her experience. My experience was that I came from a city called San Bernardino, which is really a working class town, not a lot of great high trajectory jobs there. And I moved out of San Bernardino to San Francisco. I came to the Bay Area about 10 years ago. That physical relocation transformed everything about my career opportunity. Now I'll say I went through the university system. I went to UC Berkeley. I sort of followed that traditional career path, and that worked for me. My best friend, however, didn't follow that traditional path. He didn't go to university. But in 2014, when I graduated college, I tapped him and said, hey, come move in with me. The job path, career path that you're on in San Bernardino isn't going anywhere. Come to the Bay Area and try it here. It's a completely different world, trust me. And in the years since then, without getting a new degree, without having ever gone to college, he's managed to triple his income. Now that's an incredible change. And even when you adjust for cost of living, he's in the East Bay, he's more than doubled his take-home salary. That's without changing careers per se. That's without going through a big, expensive retraining program. And what that learned, or helped me learn, is that just simply relocating, just simply being in a place where opportunities are abundant, makes you more eligible and more likely to have a high impact life and a high impact career. So for us, we don't think that the reskilling programs, the training programs, the boot camps are bad. We think that those are incredible, and we love the work that all of those teams are doing. We think simply that there is a large category of people who first and foremost should try being in the right place before they go and put themselves into a huge amount of debt or take a big risk on making a career change. It turns out that so many people can do so well simply by being in a better location for their skill set.
That's awesome. I really like that. And it makes me kind of want to dive into the user experience of someone who I guess is being placed on your platform. So let's say I'm in growth. Let's say I'm a marketing person, and let's say let's just start there. And I want to make more money. What's the experience from there? Do I go to placement.com and put in a query? Can you walk through what the experience is from end to end for me if I wanted to get placed somewhere else?
Yeah, so the first step is that there's two channels basically. You can go through the website, you can apply to the program directly if you're high intent, If you think, I really want to move, I'm pretty confident that I'm ready for a change, you can go online, go through the application flow, give us all your information. And what's going to happen is on the back end, we're going to go do a deep dive analysis on what you've told us about yourself and evaluate whether we think that, given what you've said, that there's a high confidence opportunity for you to earn more cash. If you're lower intent, you can just go to placement.com/earning-power. That is a self-serve tool. You can go in, enter your job title, enter your current city, and enter your current income. And we'll do a sort of quick and dirty analysis. We gather information from all types of government bureaus, from all different sources around what are available jobs, what are those jobs paying, what are people historically getting paid in various regions, and what's the cost of living around the country. So we'll go ahead and basically create what we call the Earning Power Report. The Earning Power Report gives you a first pass understanding of whether or not there are high confidence opportunities for you to earn more. If there is, you can go ahead and talk to our sales team. You'll ultimately wind up in the same funnel as if you had originally signed up on the application flow. If we accept working with you, and this right now is a big gate, right? So we do basically aptitude testing, personality testing. We do these assessments to figure out if you are a good fit for the program at this time. And we're constantly working to expand the definition of what it means to be a good fit for us right now. But if we accept working with you, then you sign an income share agreement with us and we go ahead and get started. And what that looks like today is we basically start going through a training program, teaching you how to, one, tell your story. Two, after we've uncovered information about you, we just rewrite your resume for you and get that into good shape. Because frankly, it's a very specific skill that doesn't help anybody do their job. It's only good for helping people get good jobs. So we just do it for you. We do mock interviews with people specifically targeted on the companies they're most interested in and the job titles that they're most interested in. And you'd be surprised how impactful doing interview training with an expert can be. We've seen people go from getting rejected 1,000 times or more literally 100 times in interviews to winning almost every interview that they go and do as a result of this mock interview training. We then, once you're basically ready to do the interview process, once we have high conviction in your interviewing skills, that you've nailed your story, that everything looks good, we then go ahead and just start quarterbacking the job search process for you. So, in the broader economy, a college graduate is expected to have something like 5 to 10 jobs within the first 10 years of leaving college. That's a lot more job searching than people have ever done in the past. And nobody likes job searching, or at least very few people do. And the reality is that as a job searcher, you have so much less information than the company does about how does these systems work, what's the best way to conduct this process, so on and so forth. So placement comes in with that knowledge, and we do all the grindy work for you. So you don't go and apply to hundreds of jobs or do anything like that. We, on the back end, if we have a relationship with the company, we'll go ahead and make that connection directly. If we don't, we'll go ahead and acquire that relationship with the company on your behalf and get you in the door with a warm introduction. At the point that you get a job offer, we then help with negotiation assistance. So we bring best practices to bear there. We help equip you with market knowledge that isn't available on the public internet to help you best negotiate the best offer. All that together, we wind up getting people anywhere between a 15% to, in some cases, a 300% raise.
Okay, so this is pretty much the dream for probably like everyone listening right now. If anyone's thinking about wanting to get paid more, like it just blows my mind how big of the opportunity is here. If you're open to it, I do want to dive in a little bit into the how the ISA works, because like it's something like I would even consider for myself. Like, is it this thing where someone makes so much more money with placement that even with the ISA, their take home is still like far more than it would have been than if they wouldn't have moved? Can you dive into that a little bit?
Yeah, so most of the companies that are in the ISA space are using a standard agreement from one of the big ISA vendors. We don't. We actually wrote our own ISA contract, and we did that because we wanted to make sure that it was completely aligned with the success of our customers. So when you work with placement, we start with your current annual income and the current cost of living of the city that you're in, right? We then adjust what your current income is to be adjusted for the cities that you're targeting. So for example, if you're going from a low cost of living place to a high cost of living place, we're going to adjust your income up so that we have an equivalent income. If you're doing the reverse, we're going to adjust it down. So if you make $200,000 in San Francisco per year and you're thinking of moving to, for the sake of example, Austin, Texas, the sort of equivalent income is about $100,000. So we start with that as our baseline. And then the contract is written such that if you don't make more than that amount, you just don't pay us. If you do make more than that amount, one of two things happens. We take 50% of the raise up to a maximum of 10% of your total income. So in this way, it sort of ramps smoothly up from your current income to a plateau of 10% of your total income. And that's it. There's basically no case where you're financially worse off than not working with placement.
That makes a lot of sense. I really admire kind of the fact that you built your own, like it's your own ISA. You're not using third party. It means you're really serious about it and just how you do the pricing. I want to go back to where I first heard about you, which was somewhere on Twitter after your huge launch. And I actually wanted to dive into how you launched placement, because there's only a handful of startups I can think of that they seem to be buzzing everywhere, at least on Twitter, that they really get the word out. And it seemed like you were one of them, at least in my opinion. So can you let me know, like, how do you think about the placement launch? How did you get the TechCrunch article? Can you go into kind of how you prepared for all of that?
Yeah, I mean, I don't think it was a lot of genius, to be honest. There really is two aspects to it. One, there was a post by somebody at Andreessen Horowitz called Product Zeitgeist Fit, which is basically trend jockeying, and placement was used as an example of a company with that. And really, I mean, we're sort of just at the intersection of a lot of things that people are thinking about. From the sort of contractual or legal technology side, we are using income share agreements. That's new, that's interesting. People are thinking about that as a new tool. And so we're sort of one of the few non-school players in that space. So that sort of makes us in the conversation. Beyond that, there's a lot of social conversation about the future of work, around the role that geography plays on lifetime earning opportunity. It's something that Raj Chetty, the economist, has been talking a lot about. And so in a non-trivial capacity, that work influenced our decision to start the business, but also then gives us a sort of wind at our back. Really it's the advice that I've always been given is you want to be at the forefront of a wave. And with placement, we're fortunately at the forefront of a really, really big wave caused by a couple smaller underlying waves. So that's one piece. The other part is just relationships. We've been in the Valley for a long time, both my co-founder and myself. And so we know a lot of people. We obviously we're writing we're coming off a very successful stint at Flexport. That was where I was before starting placement. I was the VP of product from when we were a little baby company all the way up to over $1 billion. And so in that capacity, there's some personal buzz that comes with that. Is people like to talk about people that they think are going to succeed. And I appreciate the votes of confidence there, and I hope that we can deliver. But certainly, I think that played into some part of the buzz there.
Definitely. That makes sense. I actually, how much do you, well, I actually want to go back to Flexport for a second. What have you taken from your time at Flexport, and growing from such a small company to obviously a big company? What skills, network, knowledge do you think you've taken the most from Flexport and now brought it over to placement that gives you, in some ways, almost an unfair advantage of if I wanted to start this company where I have I don't have any of those insights?
Yeah. Well, Flexport is one of the few companies that I would put into the successful bucket of operationally intensive technology businesses. So the sort of prior couple decades of successful technology companies were really focused on selling software. But at Flexport, what we did was not sell software. We sold logistics management and services, delivered and assisted with software, made intelligent using software. But fundamentally, what we've sold was a physical logistics service. And the reality of that business is that the underlying asset providers, the ocean network, the air carriers, the truckers, the governmental agencies that we're being regulated by, are not digitally enabled, which meant that we had to develop this internal muscle of building operationally intensive products and processes that involved real humans. And we were one of the few companies that got started at this early and have succeeded in a large way. And so having been able to be a part of that journey, both my co-founder and I, means that we are uniquely equipped to build an operationally intensive business. And Placement is by no means a software company. We don't think about ourselves as selling software. What we are is a talent business. We are in the weeds with people, helping manage their careers. And this historic view of scalability in Silicon Valley is if you have to add headcount as you grow revenue, your business isn't quote unquote scalable. But I just don't agree with that notion, right? If you are Starbucks or you are Walmart, anybody looking at that business would say that's a scalable business, despite the fact that those two companies are some of the largest employers in the world. And so I think it's finally coming into Silicon Valley's consciousness that you can build a hyper-growth technology company that's not strictly a software company. And I'd like to think that me and my co-founder are some of the most well-versed in the techniques that are required to do that.
So you mentioned a couple answers ago that you are riding you're in front of a wave, and a pretty big wave that's kind of, I feel like, forced by a few smaller waves. And I want to talk about the future of work, and specifically the power of the individual. There's been a lot of, I don't know, like articles, blogs, podcasts of people saying that like the power is being shifted from the institutions to the individual in many different kind of aspects. I'm kind of wondering, do you have any, is this a theory that you have and one of the driving forces behind placement, and or like on a more broad basis, what do you think the future of work is going to be like if you have to make some predictions, at least in the discipline that you're working in right now?
I strongly agree that the individual over the next 100 years is significantly more important than over the last 100 years. And the reason why I think that that's true is because the dominant source of value creation in the economy has shifted from capital to ideas. It used to be that if you wanted to get rich, you had to be rich, you had to buy machines, you had to deploy those machines at the largest scale with the most brutal of efficiency, and you used labor as a commoditized input to that production process. What we've seen over the last few decades, and what I expect to continue to play out, is this massive shift towards capital being the most important value driver to ideas being the most important value driver, is that the power of the single individual can dramatically change the outcome and trajectory of a company. And the leverage that a single individual has is increasing. And so for me, I'm strongly aligned with this idea. And, a big part of that is saying, look, humans are not fungible commodities. If I pick up one software engineer one and drop in another software engineer one, I actually can't expect the same output. Companies try to treat people as if they can expect the same output. And if you squint hard enough, maybe you can convince yourself you're getting the same output, but fundamentally you won't. And this way you do expect that the economy will become slightly more unequal. Superstars will be able to command a higher percentage or closer to the actual value that they're creating, which is incredible for the individual. But the big trick that we're hoping to help contribute to is making sure that people that are not superstars are still reaping their fair share of the economy. And yeah, in general, the other interesting things in terms of where I think the labor market is going and what the contributing factors are, first and foremost, the unemployment rate is at an exceptional low. We've been on a very long bull run. Companies are doing well, they're flush with cash, and they're hiring. So for the first time in 50 years, unemployment has reached a new low. That means that individuals just have way more power right now. And so we're really jumping on the opportunity to say, look, the power is in your hands. Let's help you do something with that, because we have the information and you have a very in-demand skill set. Let's go and get you what you're worth. The other interesting thing that comes from that is the rise of remote work. Is companies are so strapped for talent that they're willing to tap the whole country and willing to let people work in more flexible ways. And we hope to be able to help people get those jobs if that's what they're looking to do.
Where do you see remote work in I guess in technical terms, the technology adoption cycle? 10 years ago, VCs wouldn't invest. VCs in San Francisco or Sand Hill Road wouldn't invest outside of their geo, and that's slowly starting to shift. There's now even VCs with remote focused funds, and I feel like it's kind of just beginning. But I'd love your perspective on how far back will the pendulum swing with remote work, or where do you think it's going to settle?
Well, you can look at remote work really as a spectrum between fully co-located and fully distributed autonomous across the world. I really don't expect that most companies will find success on either extreme beyond a sort of trivial scale. I think that what you'll see is that labor will sort itself into places that are more amenable to their skill sets and their preferences. Like, I don't think that you're going to see another Silicon Valley, San Francisco level engineering hub across the country, but I do think you'll see other very successful second tier hubs that will make for great places to live for people at potentially a different stage in life. Phoenix, for example, is a hub for salespeople. Atlanta is pretty good at customer support and customer service. What I think you'll see really is that the companies are going to embrace a distributed trend with multiple offices, where those offices are the sort of source for a specific type of employee, as opposed to trying to pile everybody into one single office that doesn't necessarily make sense to do from a cost standpoint for either the company or the employee. But I will say that when it comes to thought work, the sort of business of ideas, that if you are alone in the mountains as a hermit working for a software company, my expectation is that you will be less effective than somebody that's in a city. And the reason for that is because when you're in a city, you're exposed to so many ideas from so many disparate people working in different fields. And the reality of innovation is that it is synthetic. It comes from the synthesis of more than one different thing, right? Often the way that you come up with new ideas is just merging together two existing ideas to create something brand new. And if you don't have a diverse, robust, ever-changing set of inputs, it's very unlikely that you produce huge innovation. Like, there's this massive returns to scale that cities have that is constrained by their ability to scale the actual infrastructure of the city. So you're seeing, I think, in my opinion, this rise of the rest of America because San Francisco, LA, and New York have failed to scale. The demand to live in these idea-generating cities is far outpacing the ability for these cities to handle new people. And that isn't necessarily technological, it's often cultural or political. We are able to build big buildings, but the cities won't let you. Regardless of the reason, I think this is an incredible opportunity for the rest of America to get to a critical mass of high-skilled thought workers such that they can start producing ideas on par with the big, huge hubs, which to me I think is a very healthy vision of America, is 30 thriving, incredible cities and tech companies, on all companies really, placing their work in whatever cities make sense. But I still do expect that companies are going to have offices. I don't expect that people are going to be, working from their PJs all across the country in the middle of the desert or something like that. Like, I just don't expect that to be realistic.
That's so funny that you mentioned that last point. I feel like remote work is often, or at least the digital nomad movement is like, oh, work on the beach with your laptop. And I'm like, have you ever tried working on the beach? It's so uncomfortable. There's no outlet. Sand gets in your computer. It's, I don't know. It's just kind of funny.
It's not even fun. I mean, I don't know. I'm also a creature of habit personally, so that might bias my viewpoint.
For sure. Well, so changing the gears a little bit, I'm kind of curious if you were, let's say, 18 again, but today in 2020, and you let's say money wasn't a concern for learning what you wanted to learn. You could learn anything and do anything. Knowing what you know about the job market, where it's going, what's in demand, and what you're interested in, what would you do if you were 18 today with all the opportunity in front of you?
Oh, I'd probably do the same thing I did. So I'm a software engineer by 15 years of training and practice and experience. I also do product design from about the same length of time. I mean, those things are booming job opportunities, and I think give you a unique perspective, or at least a very useful perspective, on how to think in terms of systems, how to think rationally and logically. And so there's this great mixture of both training your brain to think in a way that's very useful in the modern economy and being a highly skilled and highly paid job. If I was 18, I'd say do programming. Not to mention, programming is the best activity ever for the right person. Like, I can spend literally all day, every day programming. It's just so much fun. So I would probably do that.
That kind of brings me to a follow-on question. I'm wondering if you just have any thoughts on the rise of, I wouldn't call it like anti-programming, but there's a lot of people that are saying you don't need to learn how to program. You can just do no code. You can, use no code tools to build something that would have taken you X amount of time and half the time, or et cetera. Do you have any thoughts on this movement, or are you even paying attention at all to it?
Oh, I love it. I think it's so great. And I think it's great not because I expect that these tools are going to make software engineers obsolete or product designers obsolete, but what they do is they provide the opportunity for more people to realize their creative potential and visions in a way that you would just expect dramatically more interesting software and products to get built, right? Like, if you can minimize the barriers between idea and execution, that is just guaranteed to increase the amount of awesome things that get put into the world. So I don't think that there's any, I think, honestly, like, I'm 100% on board, right? Especially even if you have the skills to do some of these things. Like, I can write software all day long, every day, and I still use Excel to do basic models and programming because it's super low barriers. It's easy to change. It's easy to throw away. Like, there's all these great advantages that you get when you build tools that have lower barriers to entry. Not to mention, these are the types of things that can expand the pool of people that go into deeper levels of software engineering or design. In general, I love thinking about what are the career paths that exist in broader society to take somebody from zero knowledge to VP of X at a global Fortune 500 company. And I think an optimal society is one in which it's possible for almost everyone, saving the most disabled or whatever people. Like, there's some people that just need social safety nets, but where most people can get on some track and over a long enough time horizon with enough work, find their ways into the highest strata of society. And I think these no-code products are sort of building more on-ramps for more people into the most lucrative new job opportunity of the last 100 years.
So I guess they follow on. So I agree with you, and I'm not a developer, and I do use no code tools, and I can do things I never thought I would ever know how to do. But there does seem to be at least from what I can see, it might be a small bubble, but I mean, it seems big, like a big backlash against it. Like, oh, no code tools aren't like they're nothing. Don't worry about it. It's a trend, etc. From like a lot of developers. Why do you think? Do you think there's some people that think it's like a zero-sum game where if someone else learns no code, like coding will go away? Or like, do you have any thesis on why people might be anti-no code and more people creating?
Oh, I think there's just for every trend that some people are excited about, some people are going to hate it. And, anything that's worth doing is worth hating. So there's just always going to be some group of people that are vocal against anything that gets popular. So I wouldn't read into it much beyond that. I'm sure there's good reasons. I'm sure, for the no code haters, I'm maybe, tweet at me and tell me why your hatred is well justified. But I expect that there's 1,000 reasons that all boil down to something that isn't fundamentally existential to the no code movement.
Yeah, definitely. That makes sense. Well, for the last portion of the podcast, I want to focus on one of your proficiencies that you feel like you have over your fantastic career in tech. I mean, you've done a lot, and now with placement, I feel like you're about to do so much more. So if you don't mind sharing, what do you think is potentially your strongest proficiency or skill in business or product or development, et cetera, that you feel like you're the strongest at, that you'd be open to going into?
Well, I sort of cut my teeth and made my name in product management, so we can talk about that.
Sure. Let's do that. So in regards to product management, I mean, I think it'd be really interesting going back to your Flexport days. So if you don't mind sharing, when did you join Flexport in regards to employee number? Like how small was the company when you first got in?
I joined the company in December of 2014. I was the 4th software engineer and I believe the 20th total employee.
And that must have, I'm actually just curious, what was it like obviously you worked up the ranks there, or it was so small when you joined it. Well, actually, I don't want to assume. How did you become the head or the VP of product? Was it something where because you were so early, it just happened, or did you have to negotiate your way there against other developers? How did you land in that spot?
Good question. I mean, really what happened was I just started doing product work. I took projects that weren't very well spec'd, potentially didn't have design, and I put together all of the skills that I have and just did what I hoped everyone else would see as great work. I chimed in a way that I think most engineers don't normally chime in. And actually at Berkeley studied business. I didn't study software engineering. And so I was able to bring a well-reasoned business perspective, thinking about economics, thinking about finance, into product decisions. That sort of evolved from me product managing my own projects to then product managing other people's projects in addition to my own, because other engineers found it, difficult or not within their set of interests to talk to the operations team, to talk to customers. Meanwhile, I loved doing those things. And so I really stepped into the product management role. And once I stepped into that role, I started thinking about how are we going to grow the team? How are we going to structure this team? How are we going to build out the product such that it's going to be set up for success in the future as we add, 100 engineers, a dozen product managers. And so, one thing led to another, and I was the head of product. And I got promoted first to director of product, built a team, grew that out for a while in terms of product managers. Eventually, we reorged the design team under me, and I was promoted to the VP of product with design sort of reporting into my org. And you know, I grew with the company. We grew very quickly, and I had, yeah, what I would tell people that asked at the time is I'd say, look, if you were to drop me into Facebook right now, I couldn't be the VP of product at Facebook. One, because they're at a fundamentally different scale than we're at. And two, because I don't know anything about Facebook, but I know everything about Flexport. And so at this moment in time, I'm the right person for this job. And I found myself justifying this often because I was quite young. And you know, it worked out for quite a long time. And it was really an incredible journey.
So tell me about the moment, or it's not necessarily a moment, but it's a trend of moments where you started to find product market fit, and then you were post product market fit. What was it like managing? I don't know if you necessarily like managed the product, but like you oversaw the product, right? As you hit product market fit, like what happened? What did it feel like? And how did everything change once you kind of really started to take off?
You know, there's not a discrete moment where that happens. It's just every day you get dragged further and further and further out by your customers. And all of a sudden, like things just sort of feel like they're snowballing. And I remember having these conversations with people. They'd be like, do we have product market fit? And I'd be like, I think we have product market fit with this little segment, but we're trying to get product market fit with that segment, this new segment. Because as a product manager, you know, and a head of product, what you're always trying to do is make sure that you are eating more market share within the segments of the market that you're already addressing, and looking outwards horizontally and saying, what segments of the market are we not yet addressing, and how might we build incremental product or net new product in order to satisfy that demand. And you know, there was these moments where it was pretty clear that we sort of got over the threshold in a specific segment, and it would snowball for a while at least, and then new product demands would come in, and we would find new problems with the existing product in order to satisfy new markets or new company scales. And you know, the company grew like 1,000x or something insane while I was there, and at least on the revenue side, or 500x, I can't remember. It was a lot. It grew like an insane amount, and you know, you're just kind of on this totally nuts roller coaster, and it doesn't stop. It just keeps going. You expect that things are going to get easier as you become more successful, and it turns out that things actually become dramatically more difficult, just in very different ways. So you start to feel very, you know, blessed that this worked, but also way more stressed because running a big company is much harder than running a small company, regardless of success. Yeah, I mean, it's an experience that I think is addicting. It's just really incredible, and I hope to do it again.
So it's kind of interesting because I feel like my day job, I just got a job, I don't know, like 2 months ago at this company called Prenda, and it is definitely very early inklings of I don't know how much I can say, but it's growing very quickly. It's like it's doing very well, and I was brought in as like a very early growth hire. And it is like, I don't know, it's a small growth team, small marketing team. And I'm just like, wow, what an opportunity to make an impact and potentially help build, you know, a very like big company. If you were me, or you can just kind of think back to what you did, how would you take advantage of a situation where you are blessed with an early employee spot on the growth team at a startup that's working? What would you do if you were me to kind of optimize for the best outcome and help grow the company as much as I can?
Eliminate "that's not my job" from your vocabulary and just jump in, right? One of the values that we had at Flexport, that was the way that we did our value setting, was we operated the company for a while, and the CEO at some point paused and said, let's look at the things that we're doing that we think are successful and institutionalize those as our core company values. And one of those was fill the gap, which meant that at a small company, there's always gaps. There's a lot of things that should be getting done that aren't getting done. And if you put on your strategic prioritization hat and look at the set of things that aren't getting done, just choose one that you think you can have a huge impact on and just go and do it. I guarantee you that if you solve a big problem for the company at an early stage startup, you are almost destined to get praised and promoted. If you don't, and instead you get scolded or reprimanded, you should quit, because that's a toxic culture. At a bigger company, you probably shouldn't do that, because frankly, someone else is probably working on it and you just didn't know that they were working on it, and stepping on someone's toes is blah, blah, blah. I mean, good not to do that. At a tiny company, dive right in, solve problems, grow the business, take ownership, be an authority, be a leader. And I don't think that can really go wrong for you. Now, clearly, don't do someone else's job if they're doing it. You don't want to steamroll anybody. You just want to contribute where no one else is contributing.
Yeah, that's great advice, and I really like it. Thank you. So a couple more questions for you, then we're going to wrap it up. I really appreciate all your time and insight on the podcast. The last couple of questions is back on your company placement. One, what's the grand vision? What's the grand plans? And if you looked out a decade, or if you're, however big of a thinker you are, like look that far out, and what will you have built? What's the vision for your company?
Our goal is to have everybody in America have an agent representing their best interests. The power balance between companies and employees really has shifted, but hasn't been unlocked. So we're coming in and trying to build this whole new market of managing candidates' careers, of talent's careers over the long term. If you think about it, in the past, you had one of two institutions looking out for you. You either joined a very large company with an expectation of near lifetime employment. They put you on a track, and you knew that if you showed up in the morning and you did your best, that by the time you were 65, you'd retire with a gold watch and a pension. And if you didn't have that, you worked for probably a labor union. You worked in some blue collar work for some large, geographically important firm, and you had a labor union that was looking out for your long-term training and your negotiations and being there for you in a way that was productive. Those two sort of social compacts are gone. Increasingly few people work for labor unions. And frankly, in a world dominated by many firms with many different talent in cities, you don't need to have monopolistic labor fighting monopolistic employers, because you vote by leaving. You vote with your feet. If you don't like what your employer is doing, if you don't like how they're paying you, you don't need to ask the labor union. You just go work for the firm down the street. So that sort of social construct is gone, and the construct of lifetime employment is gone. And I don't think that it's a bad thing either. I think that net, it's very good for society, for companies to be able to take on employees, and for those employees to be able to take off. It's good for innovation to cross-pollinate between firms. But what this does is it leaves everybody with so much more work in managing their career over the long term. This is what placement aims to do. We aim to create a new institution that replaces the promise of lifetime employment, that replaces the need for a labor union, that's built ground up for the modern employee in the modern economic context to help you maximize your economic earning potential while not having to spend hours upon hours or weeks upon weeks, or in some cases months upon months, figuring out what your next career move should be. We're there for you, and we're there for that. So to that end, we don't partner with companies on a commercial basis to take placement fees. We only work for the candidate. We fight for the candidate. We fight for talent. We monetize with the income share agreement so that we're fully aligned with them. And yeah, this is all we think about all day, every day.
I feel like if there were companies running on how awesome visions are and how well a founder can portray it, you would get my vote. Yeah, that is an awesome vision that you're describing, and I'm very excited to watch it unfold and happen. And with that, I have my final question. To make your vision happen, you're obviously going to need some help along the way, and you got a whole community of listeners on the podcast that already know this question is coming. So my question is, how can the Forward Thinking Founders community help you? Do you have an ask for anyone listening or me that you need assistance with that we might be able to help with?
I got 3. First, if you or somebody you know is truly a world-class designer, focused in on consumer product design, ideally with mobile experience, hit me up. I'm at Sean Linehan on Twitter. I'm Sean@placement.com on email. We're looking to hire somebody in San Francisco to help us with product design. Currently, it's all me, and I'd like to find somebody that's significantly better than myself to take that over. 2, if you are interested in hiring world-class talent, hit me up, hello@placement.com. We don't partner with companies directly or take any fees, but if you have job listings that you're having a hard time filling, let us know and we can potentially send you candidates as they come our way. And 3, if you know anybody, or if this person is you, who is incredibly talented, underpaid, and would like to live in a high-growth city, or already live in a high-growth city, check out placement.com, sign up, get your earning power report, and we'll see if we can work with you. Now, we are extremely selective right now, not based on whether or not we think you're awesome. We have so many incredible people sign up. It's just really a function of right now whether or not we think we can add unique value to your career. And like I said earlier, we're always working to increase the definition of what that means and increase our own capabilities. So yeah, sign up if you'd like us to sort of take the reins on managing your career.
All right, there it is. Well, thank you so much for coming on to the podcast. I'm fascinated with what you're building, and I'm intrigued to see what happens and watch your vision unfold. So thanks again for coming on.
Yeah, happily. Thanks so much for chatting. This has been fun.
Okay, I hope you enjoyed that podcast. And if you did enjoy it, and you have enjoyed previous episodes, and you by chance would want to meet a good amount of the guests I've had on the podcast, then you should come to the Forward Thinking Founders Meetup. If you listen to the beginning of this episode, you know how to attend, how to get the information. But if you forgot, all you have to do is become an angel investor in the podcast for $10 a month or for $100 a year. You get access to all our in-person events and online communities and premium content. It's a hell of a deal, and let me be honest, it really supports me as a creator. So if you're interested in meeting some of the guests and me, your host, at this meetup in San Francisco late January, go to glow.fm/F20R. And let's make it happen. Hope you have a great rest of your day, and I will see you tomorrow. Peace.